Hi, this is the video for Monday, November the 9th for 11th grade English, and today we launch our new unit and our new term. So this begins the second 9 weeks, which, because we're a semester class, is really the second and last term. And we'll be doing 2 units in this. The first unit is the Wild West, and the second unit will really get us ready for the Reading SOL, which is going to be in January. Our next unit will be about the Civil War. So today, I'm launching the Wild West, and we'll talk about it in general terms today. We'll look at the myth of the Wild West, and then we'll begin our central text. Here's the full agenda right here in front of you. The myth of the Wild West through film is going to be our concept we look at today. Here are slides, and we'll move through our film activity. And the last thing we do here is begin our novel. Our novel is called True Grit, and we'll read it online for the first little part of the unit before you all have physical copies. So let's take a look at our slides. The Wild West is a term I'm going to use, but really there are a lot of terms you could use to describe this era of history and really this concept. What we're looking at is Western expansion. The way that in the 19th century, America grew from this place on the eastern seaboard to the Appalachian Mountains, and then past that to the Mississippi River, and then beyond the Mississippi all the way to the Pacific. So the 18th century is a time of incredible growth, and we'll be looking at that in more general, conceptual, and literary terms than like hard-hitting history. But we will look at some historical moments as well. It's just that this week we're more interested in the concept of this myth of the Wild West. I'm going to use the word myth a lot today. I am using myth as a more general and positive term. Our genius, Neil Postman writes, lies in our capacity to make meaning through the creation of narratives that give a point to our labors, exalt our history, elucidate the present, and give direction to our future. Put another way, as human beings, we need myths. Why do we need them? In class, we wondered about this. Answers that might come up that I'm looking for. I think myths give us a story that we can believe in about ourselves. Myths are a way that we can tell a beautiful or at least meaningful narrative about the point of our lives. Myths in this context are an origin story, a story that orders our lives. Myth does not have to be untrue. Rather, it can mean origin story, a narrative that gives us meaning. As Americans, we need myths about our national origin, and the West gives us some of those myths. So the myth of the Wild West. Immediately we have images that come to mind. The cowboy on the Bronco on the left here. On the right, we have the cowboy again meeting a Native American. A couple of moments that capture the myth of this untamed land that's ruled by Indians that the settlers need to understand. They need to encounter the open space, and they need to encounter the Indian in that space. So there are some myths right off the bat. Other terms that come to mind here that are all basically interchangeable is the Wild West, the Old West, the Great West, or the Frontier. They all mean the same thing in American lore. The myth of the West defines Americans as adventurous, individualistic, and free. A lot of what we perceive ourselves to be as Americans come from this story. Free to roam and claim the land, the frontier. Free to shape the land. Free to be unattached to institutions or even laws. So we're going to use a bit of film to help us understand this myth today. And there's a word art that one of our colleagues did that captures the myth pretty strongly. So what he did is take every Western film. A Western is a genre of film that's about the West. It's about cowboys and Indians and ranchers and just a lot of gunslinging and saloon battles and that. The Western movie. He took the titles of all of them over the last few decades and put them into a Wordle. Wordle will make the biggest words the ones that appear the most, and everything else will kind of vary in size depending on how often it appears as a movie title. So this is what it looks like. Oops. So here in the shape of a cowboy hat, you have these giant words that capture the most frequently used language in the movie title. Man strikes me as interesting. There are not a lot of women on the frontier. Native American women, Indian women are more or less invisible in these stories. Gun, this concept of the free ranging prairie as a place where you needed a gun. That's still captured in a very American myth, something that we can consider the ramifications of. West, of course, the name of our unit. Trail, and we'll look at other concepts with trail, like the Oregon Trail. Rider, ride, cowboy, these ideas about movement and especially involving horse. So a lot of these words we'll actually encounter as we go through our unit today around film. So we're going to do this through an activity. You'll have about 15 minutes to do it in class. If you're watching this at home, you can do it at your own pace. To do it, you'll have to open up a new big Google Doc that we'll use for the second 9 weeks. I've made it a little more structured this first week. You're going to see a series of activities in the first week. You'll also see stems. We're going to do stems every day. And in today's date, you'll find a table with links to different TV shows and movies. So click through each short film clip and write your notes next to it. What is its mood or feeling, atmosphere? What is the setting? We'll do the first one together, and at the end we'll come together and explore this central question of what is the myth of the Wild West. Students have 15 minutes to work. What it looks like is here, take you to the screen, new big Google Docs second term 11th grade English, and when you open yours up, it's going to kind of resemble the old one. It won't feel totally dissimilar from what you've gotten used to. You can already see the stem listed, but then there's this table. It won't be like this every day, but this week I want to organize our thinking around these tables. So I can't play these clips if you're watching the video because of copyright, but I'm going to still practice the setting with you and the atmosphere. So let's say you have watched Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman intro. You've looked at that little 1-minute clip, and you're trying to describe the mood and the setting. Use adjectives, I say. So let's say mood first. The mood is romantic, loving, even. There's images of care and also images of ruggedness. There's a kind of love on the prairie. Nothing is refined, but everything is very loving, intimate. The setting: dry, dusty roads, wooden houses, open space. So the space that we have for the Wild West is kind of captured in the film there. I want you to do that for each of these three. We're defining these things today, so mood will define as atmosphere or feeling of the text, and then setting is time and space. And then you'll go down at the end to do this. Since the setting is in the Wild West, what do you know about the story? That will be your async work. But for now, we're going to go back to our slides. So then as a class, we talked about what is the myth that's coming up through these images, through this activity. And it's going to be something along the lines of this rugged frontier where everybody is self-reliant, independent. They have to forge for themselves. There's a lot of space, too. Just the myth of the West is this very open space. Lots of horses, lots of cowboys. How do you get around in a space so vast? There are not really trains in a lot of these scenes, or if they're there, they're linking things together without being the mode of transportation. You have to get around on a horse. So all of that is the scene for True Grit. And the last movie you see there in our activity is True Grit. We're going to read the first chapter together, and how we did this is in class, I stayed online and read it out loud in asynchronous time. If you are not choosing to do that, then you read it on your own. For the purposes of this video, I'll start it together and then ask you to finish on your own and then do your stem. So, I'm going to show you where to find the link to it again and again and again. It's going to be in the daily agenda for now. Read online here, it says. But you'll also be able to find it in our slides, and you'll also be able to find it in the weekly objectives. So let's read it for a little bit. All right, so True Grit, Chapter 1. People do not give it credence that a 14-year-old girl could leave home and go off in the wintertime to avenge her father's blood, but it did not seem so strange then, although I will say it did not happen every day. I was just 14 years of age when a coward, going by the name of Tom Cheney, shot my father down in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and robbed him of his life and his horse and $150 in cash money, plus 2 California gold pieces that he carried in his trouser band. Here's what happened. We had clear title to 480 acres of good bottom land on the south bank of the Arkansas River, not far from Dardendale in Yell County, Arkansas. Tom Cheney was a tenant, but working for hire, and not on shares. He turned up one day hungry and riding a gray horse that had a filthy blanket on his back and a rope halter instead of a bridle. Papa took pity on the fellow and gave him a job and a place to live. It was a cotton house made over into a little cabin. It had a good roof. Tom Cheney said he was from Louisiana. He was a short man with cruel features. I will tell more about his face later. He carried a Henry rifle. He was a bachelor, about 25 years old. In November, when the last of the cotton was sold, Papa took it in his head to go to Fort Smith and buy some ponies. He had heard that a stock trader there named Colonel Stonehill had bought a large parcel of cow ponies from Texas drovers on their way to Kansas and was now stuck with them. He was getting shed of them at bargain rates, as he did not want to feed them over the winter. People in Arkansas did not think much of Texas Mustang ponies. They were little and mean. They had never had anything but grass to eat and did not weigh over 800 pounds. Papa had an idea they would make good deer hunting ponies, being hardy, small, able to keep up with the dogs through the brush. He thought he would buy a small string of them. Things worked out, he would breed and sell them for that purpose. His head was full of schemes. Anyway, it would be cheap enough investment to start with, and we had a patch of winter oats and plenty of hay to see the ponies through the spring when they could graze in our big north pasture and feed on greener and juicier clover than they ever saw in the Lone Star State. As I recollect, shelled corn was something under 15 cents a bushel then. Papa intended for Tom Cheney to stay and look after things on the place while he was gone, but Cheney set up a fuss to go, and after a time he got the best of Papa's good nature. If Papa had a failing, it was his kindly disposition. People would use him. I did not get my mean streak from him. Frank Ross was the gentlest, most honorable man who ever lived. He had a common school education. He was a Cumberland Presbyterian and a Mason, and he fought with determination at the Battle of Elkhorn Tavern, but was not wounded in that scrap, as Lucille Biggers Lanford states in her Yale Country Yesterdays. I think I am in a position to know the facts. He was hurt in the terrible fight at Chickamauga, up in the state of Tennessee, and came near to dying on the way home from want of proper care. Before Papa left for Fort Smith, he arranged for a colored man named Yarnell Poindexter to feed the stock and look in on Mama and us every day. Yarnell and his family lived just below us on some land he rented from the bank. He was born of free parents in Illinois, but a man named Bloodworth kidnapped him in Missouri and brought him down to Arkansas just before the war. Yarnell was a good man, thrifty and industrious, and he later became a prosperous house painter in Memphis, Tennessee. We exchanged letters every Christmas until he passed away in the flu epidemic of 1918. To this day, I have never met anybody else named Yarnell, white or black. I attended the funeral and visited in Memphis with my little brother and his family. Instead of going to Fort Smith by steamboat or train, Papa decided he would go on horseback and walk the ponies back, all tied together. Not only would it be cheaper, but it would be pleasant for him and a good ride. Nobody loved to gad about on a prancing steed more than Papa. I have never been very fond of horses myself, and although I believe I was accounted a good enough rider in my youth, I was never afraid of animals. I remember once I rode a mean goat through a plum thicket on a dare. Okay, so for you at home, I'm stopping there. You have to finish chapter 1 and then do the stems.